Hey everyone, it's Christine. Welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be sharing with you one of my favorite recipes, and it's not the healthiest thing, but it is a healthier version. We're going to be making pumpkin bread today, and it's a vegan recipe. If you're not a vegan, you're still going to love it, and if you really insist on not doing this vegan recipe, you can put eggs in it. It's the same thing. So it's a delicious treat that I love, and I'm not really a sweet person, but this is one of my favorites. So here we go. Okay, so for our pumpkin bread recipe, the first thing you're going to need is 3 cups of an all-purpose flour, and I'm using this Red Mill organic all-purpose flour. I have tried using whole wheat flour with this, and I feel like it just doesn't come out as well, but you can do it. It tends to be a little bit drier, so I like to use the white flour for this, and that's a little bit much. So we're going to do 3 cups of this. So here's 2 and 1 more. There we go, that's 1 cup. Okay, so I'm going to start with the dry ingredients and then mix the wet ingredients separately, and then we're going to bring them together. So we have our flour, then we're going to add some baking powder and baking soda. You need both of them for this. So we're doing 2 teaspoons of the baking soda. So we're going to go teaspoon, 2 teaspoons. It's important to be pretty accurate when you're baking. So you want to scrape it and get a nice even teaspoon. So we're going to do 2 of those. And only a half a teaspoon of the baking powder. So a little teaspoon or half a teaspoon, and drop that right in there with the flour. Okay, and then we're going to add our spices. So I'm using 3 spices. You could always add more. I've seen recipes with ginger. I like these 3 spices for this. So we're going to start with cinnamon, of course. And we're going to do a whole tablespoon of cinnamon. Okay, and if you don't like this much, you can always add less, or if you want more, you can add more. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't change the recipe. It just makes it a little spicier. Tablespoon of nutmeg. Put that in there. And we're going to do a tablespoon of cloves. I really think that it's important to add the cloves because I've made this without the cloves, and it's so much better when you have the cloves in there. It just adds a lot of yummy flavor that goes well with the pumpkin. Okay, so we have our spices. Okay, so I'm going to take a whisk and just kind of blend that so that it's all nice and mixed up. There we go, that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to set this aside for a second. We're going to get another bowl and start the wet ingredients. So the first thing you're going to need is a giant can of pumpkin. So I like to use a lot of pumpkin. So this is about 4 cups if you're measuring it. You can also make your own pumpkin puree using a pumpkin pie pumpkin. So you would slice this in half and roast it with a little bit of olive oil on it for about an hour on a low heat, and you can make your own, but just buy a can. Very quick and easy. So I'm going to open this up. And we're going to scoop that into the bowl. This is my favorite. I love pumpkin. Pumpkin is so good for you. It has loads of vitamin A, antioxidants, lots of fiber. Okay, so you get that in there. And then I like to add the sugar with the wet ingredients. So I am going to use a coconut sugar. So you can use regular white sugar. Coconut sugar is slightly healthier. I mean, it's not totally healthy, but it is a little bit lower on the glycemic index, so it's not going to spike your blood sugar like a normal, like white table sugar would do. Okay, so we're going to do 2 cups of this. So it's a lot of sugar, I know, but we are making something sweet, so we need to make it sweet. So we're going to add that in, and the coconut sugar kind of has that toasted flavor, so it's really kind of yummy. I kind of like it better. Anyway, so I'm going to start to blend this right now, just at this point, so we can get that incorporated. And if you have a mixer, I have a standing mixer, but I didn't feel like I needed to get that out for this. It's not that hard. There's not a lot of mixing that you have to do, but you can do it with the mixer. I've done it before. That's pretty easy to do just by hand. So I'm gonna mix that in until it's pretty incorporated. Okay. So now we would add eggs, right? So you can add eggs. So you would use 3 eggs for this. I'm gonna use, since this is a vegan recipe, we're gonna use a red mill egg substitute, which I actually think, and I've made this with eggs before I became vegan. I used to make this recipe with eggs, and I feel like the egg substitute gives it a better texture. So, I don't know. It tastes just as good. There's no difference. So what you're gonna need is, for each egg, you're gonna use 1 tablespoon of the egg substitute. So you're gonna get a nice even tablespoon, and we need 3, because we're using 3 eggs for this. Okay. And then for every tablespoon, you're gonna need 2 tablespoons of water. So, put some water right here, and we're gonna need 6. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Whoa, I got a little extra. That's okay. It's all good. So then take your whisk and whisk that together. And it's crazy because it starts to actually get kind of a consistency like an egg. You just got to keep mixing it. It starts to thicken up. So eggs in a recipe, really what they do is just kind of bind everything together. So what you just need a binder. And that's what this does. And I don't know if you can see, it's starting to thicken up pretty good. And you can see it's kind of eggy. I know it's kind of gross, but you can see it's got that egg consistency. And as it sits here, it'll get even thicker. I'm just gonna mix it a little bit more. It gets to be right about like this, right? So it's kind of coating the whisk a little bit, kind of like an egg. So we're gonna add that in. So eggs. Okay, there we go. And we're gonna mix that together. Awesome. Okay, and the last wet ingredient that you're going to need is 2/3 of a cup of olive oil. Now, I like olive oil for this. You can also use coconut oil. I've tried it with coconut oil. It's really good with coconut oil, but it's more of a hassle because the coconut oil is solid. So you're gonna have to melt it down and then let it cool a little bit before you can add it. So this is just a little easier and it comes out awesome. So we're gonna measure out 2/3 of a cup, which is hard for me to see right now. Now it seems like a lot, but you have to remember that you're making a big bundt cake. So, you know, you're not going to be eating 2/3 of a cup unless you eat the whole thing, which I sometimes want to. I have to stop myself. So I'm going to mix that in. It's dangerous, especially with a cup of coffee in the morning. It's like you can just keep slicing these slices. It's out of control. All right, so we're gonna mix that in really good, and I feel like I'm splattering it. And so I don't know if you can see, it's starting to get very wet. All right, so at this point, we're gonna start adding the dry ingredients that we did into the wet. I think that's the easiest way to do it. So I'm gonna do about half. So I'm gonna take about half of this, okay? And we're gonna kind of fold it in so it doesn't fly everywhere. And now we're gonna add that second half. Get rid of that. And we've got that second half of flour in there. That looks pretty good. So that's what your bread dough should look like. Okay, so, and I can do that because there's no eggs in this. I can lick it right off my fingers and it tastes yummy. Okay, so I'm gonna take, there's a little bit of oil left in this pan. Measuring cup. And I'm gonna take a paper towel and just kind of dip it in there. And we're gonna take our bundt pan and just kind of go over it a little bit with the olive oil. And you could use, if you're not doing a vegan version, you can use butter, right? Butter does tend to make it kind of crunchy on the outside though. I don't know why, but it does. Okay, and now we're gonna scoop this in to the pan. And I didn't mention this at the beginning, but you do want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees for this. And we are gonna bake this for probably about 50 minutes to an hour. It just depends on your oven. I would just check it. So we're gonna check it at about 40 minutes and see how it's doing. And if it needs more time, we'll put it back in because you don't want it to dry out. Okay, I got all of it, a little bit more. Oh. Okay, once you get it in there, kind of spread it around. Make sure it's all in there really nicely. And then I like to take, where is it? Oh, there. That same paper towel that I used. And I'm just gonna kind of clean up any little drips and just give it one little shake. All right, I'm gonna put this in the oven and we'll be back in an hour to see what it looks like. Okay, I just took it out of the oven and here is the final result. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? So I'm gonna cut a piece so you guys can see. I'm gonna have a bite. It is super moist. It's so good. You guys have to try this recipe, and if you do, let me know how you liked it in the comments. I will have the full recipe for you. Try it out. Thanks for watching and subscribe to my channel.